The Halo Combat Evolved Remake is now official thanks to 343. Fortunately for us true fans, 343 has just the resume to prove that they're up to the task. They have 3 world-renowned Halo games under their belt, 1 canceled 10-year plan, and 1 rebrand just to make sure that their previous fame doesn't overshadow Combat Evolved. I often hear people say that dropping the 10-year plan was a bad thing. Obviously, 343 had to stop production on Infinite because there's not a cash shop for the campaign. Not to mention, we can't have a 343 Halo game without drop storylines. It should be noted that I genuinely believe that there are talented people at 343 that provide valuable contributions to these games, but the work they have churned out has been hampered by those in charge. 343 has somehow managed to fall upwards with Halo 5 and Infinite into Campaign Evolved, a title so terrible that only 343 could have thought of it. You would think that the studio would have to prove that they're competent enough to remake the game that so greatly contributed to propelling Microsoft into the gaming scene. 343 have not been making Halo games with the intent of doing justice to the franchise, but instead it's been about making easy money. We have plenty of evidence from 343's recent Halo entries that they'll do whatever it takes to make a buck, even if their nonsensical decision-making doesn't reflect that. Making the multiplayer of Infinite free was their loophole into having a cash shop and battle passes, neither of which have any place in Halo despite being normalized in the industry. It's important to note that a successful cash shop can make way more money than a retail price game that doesn't have a cash shop. And on top of that, they could also make money from their $60 half-baked campaign. They obviously see that everyone else is doing remakes and people are buying them, so they figure that they might as well hop on the remake train too. 343 desperately needs a win here. The issue is that with the current state of Halo being what it is, due to 343's and Microsoft's incompetence, a win from a remake means very little for the franchise as a whole, and likely wouldn't restore faith in 343 to warrant calling them by their new name. But honestly, with how much drama is already leaking out concerning this remake, it doesn't sound like the recipe has changed much despite their claims.
Halo Infinite was the last remnants of how we made Halo games in the past. That was our recipe. And what we are doing right now, we're changing that recipe.
So 4-player split-screen co-op that supports crossplay, but no multiplayer, huh? Excluding multiplayer is an insult to Halo fans, and I'll explain 343's reasoning for this decision later on. Combat Evolved revolutionized the FPS genre, and I'm hoping that 343 will use this as an opportunity to set themselves apart from the competition and do something truly different as opposed to chasing trends like they've done so often in the past. First, it was a remaster of Combat Evolved. Then it was making Halo 5 a microtransaction-filled game with a heavy emphasis on esports. With Infinite, they wanted it to be a live service with expensive skins and battle passes. And now we're on to a remake that shouldn't be happening right now. What differentiates this game from other remakes is the timing of its release. Faith in 343 is at rock bottom. The same cannot be said for the circumstances behind other remakes. Resident Evil 2 Remake released just 2 years after the acclaimed RE7. Final Fantasy VII Remake released after a great entry in Final Fantasy 15. You also have some franchises like Dead Space and Silent Hill that were long dormant, where the remakes were testing the waters in order to gauge whether fan interest was still there. This is not the case for Halo. Everyone knows that the interest in the franchise is still there, but faith in the developers is not. They aren't making this remake after a great mainline game. We're getting it after 2 pretty bad ones, and depending on how you feel about Halo 4, maybe 3 bad ones. This new dawn for Halo that 343 is claiming as being on the horizon is the same one they promised for Halo Infinite back in 2017. Considering how things went with Infinite, no one should place any trust in 343 unless you want to be let down again. The irony of them being named after 343 Guilty Spark is that he goes from being a potential ally to an enemy, back to an ally, and then again to an enemy. Many fans of the franchise keep falling for this ruse as well. After each bad game, fans believe that 343 are these trustworthy caretakers of the franchise. Oh, but they did change their name. Maybe I should give them a second chance. Let's hear from the current head of Halo Studios about how the studio has changed and what makes it a great place to work.
Imagine a place where you have the commitment that this is what we want to do, Halo games, and create those experiences. Imagine that this is what we want to do. Imagine Halo games.
I'm imagining it.
E3 demo from start to finish.
There's so much momentum that we have right now, and focus and clarity on not just what we're building, but why we're building and kind of this next phase of Halo.
The worlds that we're building, the stories that we're going after.
Holy shit. New stories?
It's not a game, it's a research project for our studio so we can prepare ourselves for the next steps of making
Halo games.
And they're practicing with the new engine? Well, now you gotta show me how the progress is coming along.
We've got some new mechanics, some new AI behaviors, things that haven't been done before in Halo 2.
There it is! Roger that! Take that! Yeah, man!
New AI behaviors.
The silent cartographer is somewhere inside that
New
facility.
AI behaviors.
They're already inside. We have to get in there and stop them before.
Things that haven't been done before.
The Covenant are putting up a real fight. Covenant are putting up a real fight. The cartographer must be here. My analysis.
Now, I know people are seeing the criticism for Campaign Evolved and pointing out that this is a work in progress. I would like everyone to know that this fact is not lost on me. But that excuse isn't a shield that makes the game exempt from criticism. 343 is asking for this feedback, by the way. If the game is not ready to be shown to the public, then don't do it. If I'm editing a rough draft, then I'm going to provide all the possible feedback that I can. I'm not going to ignore any error, whether it's basic or complex, and assume that they will fix it in the final draft. And if I'm the one presenting the rough draft for editing, then I also want it to be as complete as can be so that I can get the best possible feedback. With Campaign Evolved, they're showcasing the game and even letting people play through the demo, which tells me that they feel pretty confident in it. They want to know how the game feels for those that were allowed to play it. And if the AI is not up to par, then the demo is not ready. I'm going to be harder on this game because there's a lot more at stake with a remake than an original entry for 343. With a remake, you run the risk of people ignoring it after playing through it once and favoring the original instead. 343 has stated that they want to create something that stands shoulder to shoulder with the original without replacing it. I don't believe that this is possible because the gameplay is going to be largely the same between the two. People will have a preference between them despite what 343 says, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a preference. There's just something about this statement that rubs me the wrong way. It feels like a cop-out to give them an excuse for the things that won't be faithful to the original. I mean, if the library is improved upon in the remake, then is it just going to stand side by side with the original, or would that not be a reason to play the remake's version of the library instead of the original level? When I heard the rumors regarding the remake being campaign only, I sincerely believed that there would be some sort of multiplayer announcement to accompany the remake. So Microsoft is allowing the release of a campaign-only remake of a beloved classic from a developer that has disappointed fans time after time. I guess as long as Halo is profitable under 343, who cares about the quality of the product? I really wanted to believe that there was no way they'd do something as ridiculous as release the remake without CE multiplayer. It looks like we'll likely be seeing a separate multiplayer announcement that is unrelated to CE at a later date. People still want the Combat Evolved multiplayer though. I'll tell you the reason why they're doing it this way. They know they won't get by with putting a cash shop in Combat Evolved. So the next iteration of Halo multiplayer will be free to play, like Infinite, and it will have monetization just as egregious. All of it is very calculated from 343. They want the majority of their player base to be playing the games that have cash shops that accompany the multiplayer. I would hope that consumers would see that $60 or the more probable $70 price point for Campaign Evolved and decide to skip it. It shouldn't be this difficult to get a complete Halo on release. Using online co-op as an excuse for not having multiplayer is a new low for 343. The disappointing reality is that people will still buy it because the standard for Halo has fallen lower than ever. At least when Infinite released, Game Pass was still a cheap option to play the game at launch. Now charging $30 to rent this remake day one is a ridiculous asking price. But, I guess you do get Fortnite Crew and Ubisoft Plus, so that actually is pretty good. Halo fans have been starved for a new Halo campaign that lives up to the standard that Bungie set. Infinite's campaign was below average, but the ending was especially disappointing. It just kind of ended, leading to a sense of denial that I hadn't experienced since vanilla Destiny 1. I guess at least with Destiny, Bungie made it a little bit farther into their 10-year plan than 343 did with Infinite. In terms of 10-year plans, at least Anthem got a story update. In a way though, there will be a story update for Infinite, so I do really hope that everyone enjoys the book DLC. Going back to my previous point about the timing of this remake, I just don't think that Combat Evolved is in dire need of fixing, unlike the mess that was left behind as a result of Halo 5 and Infinite. I don't love the idea of doing remakes in general, but since they are going through with it, I will say this about what the remake needs to do. Campaign Evolved needs to feel unique. I don't agree with remakes straight up copying the original, but it also can't just be 343 bringing modern FPS tropes to classic Halo. I don't want to see infinite assets in the game to improve continuity. This is supposed to be a remake of Combat Evolved, not a reboot of the franchise. This is the predicament with all remakes, and 343 gets no excuses here because they chose to go through with this. They have the unenviable task of modernizing and innovating, while still managing to recapture what made the original special. You can't copy too much, or else there's no reason for the remake's existence, but deviate too much and you risk drawing the ire of fans of the original. 343 showcased a good amount of the silent cartographer level, and there were noticeable changes to the art direction and audio, but the level looked to play largely the same as the original. I think it's a fair assumption to say that this level will be on the safer end in regards to the changes they're making with the campaign. This makes sense for the reveal of the remake, but I was pretty surprised just how similar it played. The developer roundtable mentioned that they would have 3 bonus missions that they described as a prequel setup for the main course. This is where 343 has the most to prove and exactly what I was hoping they would do. We can only guess if this additional content will be up to par with the rest of CE and how it will fit in with the story. Now, while they did mention some of the additions to this remake, there is still a notable exclusion. Firefight is a staple of Halo, and 343 has the perfect opportunity to include it in Combat Evolved for the first time. Perhaps it's something that they're keeping under wraps for now. But you can't say that you're focusing on online co-op instead of multiplayer and not include Firefight. This would go a long way to justify the price of this game. I'm concerned about what plans they have for the story, as they have made this statement during the roundtable.
Talk to me just a little bit about how we're approaching the narrative aspects to bring it up to the same level as the rest of this game.
Leveling the narrative aspects of Combat Evolved to match the level of the rest of the remake. That doesn't sound like honoring the legacy of the original. This question stands out to me because it comes off as arrogant and belittling to Combat Evolved. Excuse it as a poor choice of words if you will, but that is what it sounds like.
We want to tell an authentic story and we want to level up the cinematics.
So in response, they mention the cinematics. Sure, new cinematics are a fair addition, so I'm fine with that part. Now, telling an authentic story is where I start to take issue. But first, let's figure out what an authentic story is and how this differs from the original Combat Evolved. Authentic storytelling often refers to stories that are relatable, emotional, or realistic. So how exactly does 343 intend to apply authentic storytelling to this remake? Well, it starts with the characters. It could be something as little as showing Fohammer's face in a cinematic, or as big as expanding character development. What do we know that they're doing with the characters? They are re-recording lines for the principal cast, which includes Chief, Cortana, and Johnson. This will of course include brand new lines as well, but not just in the bonus missions. No doubt that this also applies to the missions from the original. Inherently, that doesn't sound so bad. But let's focus on the Chief in particular.
I'm setting the table for you, but it's up to you to decide what you want to eat.
Master Chief is human. He's not a machine. He's not a set of armor with a big weapon.
Say what you will about the direction 343 went with the Chief in their games, most people feel that developing the Chief as a character and humanizing him was well done in Halo 4 and Infinite. So what is the problem with a more authentic story in this remake, and by extension, more authentic characters? The issue is that this is a remake that has an obligation to honor Bungie's vision for who the Chief is and what he represents.
The success of the story is we didn't pump a lot of time into figuring out who the Master Chief was and why he was a ghost in the shell. We thought he is a husk. He's a big green suit of armor that you move around.
There's something good about having the Master Chief essentially be a blank slate that helps each individual person connect to the character.
If 343 wants to do their own thing in their original entries, then fine. But with this being a remake, this kind of decision not only deviates too far from the original, but dishonors the legacy that it left behind. Honoring that legacy should be the first and foremost goal when producing a remake. If this is the direction that they're indeed going, then 343 is at the very least being dishonest and contradictory in their statements. I don't think it a far-fetched idea to say that if you're 343 doing this remake, then you believe to some extent that you can make something that is superior to the original. Maybe even to the point of establishing a new canon with the remake by having it more closely resemble the games they've made. With the CE remake officially coming to PlayStation, it is disappointing that this is going to be many gamers' introduction to the franchise. What's more, if they do eventually play the original Combat Evolved, then their first impressions of the game will have been influenced by the remake. At the moment, there is no standing shoulder to shoulder with a Combat Evolved that is not on PlayStation to begin with. Now don't get me wrong, it's fantastic that Halo is coming over to PlayStation for the first time, but I would prefer if the Master Chief Collection was ported over first. It doesn't mean that the MCC on PlayStation can't eventually happen, but now it definitely won't be ported until after the CE remake is released. A remake of the already incredible Combat Evolved is not the solution to revitalizing Halo. Every 343 Halo game has had redeeming qualities that were worthy of praise, and CE remake will too. The time and money they're spending on this thing could be put towards a new entry or fixing Infinite's incomplete story. That also goes for making the core cast re-record their lines. I'd be more content with this if we first had a definitive ending for these characters. I find it difficult to get excited for the future of Halo when every 343 entry is riddled with issues. Compounded on top of that are the countless promises that they have not made good on. I would implore all that love Halo to appreciate that we as fans got 5 Bungie
Halo games.
Most franchises don't hold on for as long as Halo has, and despite the low quality of recent entries, at least it hasn't been permanently shelved. Ultimately, I want the best for Halo as a franchise, as it was my introduction to gaming. But I have also reconciled with the fact that the Halo that I loved won't see the heights that it once reached, and that's okay.
Halo. It's finished.
No. I think we're just getting worse.